Hello, I'm Ashley. I was talking to someone the other day and they were talking about how sometimes they explode. Now, I know that this is hard for us to admit, but we all have had a time whenever we explode or we say something that we wish that we wouldn't. And so I wanted to kind of dissect our behavior a little bit and see if we can get some insight, as we have some self-exploration activity. So if you want to turn your attention to this whiteboard, I'm going to draw a little bit. So if you think about your own personal example, we'll walk through an example here. So let's just say you have some sort of situation and you really have felt your frustration continue to increase. You get frustrated. Well, when you get up here, you finally have had enough frustration to where you might say, fine, I'm going to say something. Or maybe you don't even outwardly think I'm going to say something, but you just explode. And so what happens up here, you might end up yelling, you might throw something. It can look different for different people. Oftentimes it includes words that we end up regretting. And then we oftentimes will have this crash. We'll end up, maybe we'll feel better. Maybe we'll feel a release. We'll feel a flood. And sometimes people feel so grateful that they got up to there because they ended up letting it out. But most of the time we end up having some regret, wishing that we hadn't said anything at all. And so I want us to get to a healthy place where we can share our frustrations. I know even for myself, I do try to deal with conflict, but it still makes me nervous. It still makes me uncomfortable. I oftentimes put it off more than I should. But one of the things that I've realized is that if I can feel that I'm starting to get angry here is the best place for me to deal with it because I'm aware of it. When I'm down here, I might not even be aware that I'm frustrated. It may not have been something that even is I'm aware of at that point. But by here, I might start feeling myself get tense. I might start sweating. I might start feeling like I want to leave, and I need to deal with this at this point. I've heard in addictions, the field, don't get too hungry, angry, lonely, tired. And we'll give that abbreviation, HALT. Don't get too hungry, angry, lonely, or tired. And so when we get up here, you start to feel your blood pressure rise. You feel like, oh, I'm angry. If I don't get out of here, I'm going to say something. Or you might be in a room and you get really, really hot and you notice that it's making you grumpy and you got to take care of yourself. Well, those notifications are to help us meet our basic needs. And so at this point, if we learn to deal with it, we might not get up here. We might calm ourselves, cool ourselves down so that we don't end up having some sort of explosion. And so what do we notice? Well, we can say, I didn't say anything, but I did feel upset. And then eventually I exploded. And so if we kind of create this space right in here where we say, I'm going to observe what is going on from this point to this point before I explode, then in the future I can regulate my behavior. So for example, if I take an example where I was at a family event and I was hot, I was grumpy, I was upset emotionally, and I knew that that I was just ready to go, and I stayed longer than I should have, and I ended up exploding. I was frustrated, and I ended up expressing the frustration on someone that they didn't really deserve it, and they hadn't done anything. And so sometimes we displace our aggression. So we put off our aggression on a safer place. So for example, say you have a dog and you're really frustrated at work. You come home and you yell at the dog, like, why'd you pee on the floor? But we like explode on the dog, and you're like, whoa, what happened? Well, that's because we had some aggression here and we didn't deal with it. And then we get up here and then we explode. And so how do we prevent these situations from happening? We have to learn. We have to be observers of ourselves. We learn what's going on inside of us, and then we can get better. So an exercise could be for you, draw this out. What does it look like for you? Because this isn't everybody. Sometimes people, they might stay up here a little bit longer, and then, you get down and maybe it gets better. Maybe it doesn't. You just kind of stay up here with anger for a while. But usually there's some sort of release whenever we let out our aggression. We feel better. Sometimes I've had conversations with my husband after I, let something out. And I feel better because I finally said something, and he feels worse. And so then we get frustrated because we're not on the same page. But we're only responsible for dealing with our emotions to a certain level, right? We're responsible for expressing them. And if my husband doesn't know how I feel, it's my job to communicate that with him. And then if he gets upset about it, he has to deal with his emotions. And then we should both, care and be, empathetic with one another. That's going to be the best way, but we can learn most about ourselves. We have full disclosure with ourselves. And although we lie to ourselves sometimes, we can use this process and learn. So take some time, think about a time whenever you've gotten up here, you've exploded, what happened before then? And you can do that with multiple exercises. You can do this over again, and try to analyze what's going on. And then how can I help myself in the future? And a good step is to say, what does it feel like here? What signs and symptoms could I start looking for? I start to get really hot. I start to clam up and I'm not able to communicate words. Well, it's because our frontal cortex stops thinking. When we get in fight or flight mode, our frontal cortex is not working in the same way. And so this is the part of our brain that helps us to regulate our thinking. It helps us to think through and rationalize, is this a nice thing to say or is it not? Well, the great thing about anger is that it helps us talk or to escape or to get out what we need to, but it's usually not in a way that's going to be most conducive to having a healthy relationship in the future. And so it's best if we can use that motivation to tell us, let's schedule an appointment, let's make this happen, but then try to have those conversations whenever we're calm. So take some time. Think about your anger, your situations, and what does it look like in this space here? So I'd love to hear from you. How is this exercise working for you? If you want to chat more, then send us a private message. Have a good one.